Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Nate Hochman will be with us. We'll talk about the border crisis with him and his reporting from all around the country. And you can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. There is an untold number of people who are dead in the war between Russia and Ukraine. We've seen a lot of varying pieces of data, but including over 1 million who've been killed or wounded in that war. Among fighting age Ukrainian men, those numbers are dwindling dramatically, and the average age of the country is becoming much older as a result of that. It's devastation after devastation, and there's absolutely no willingness among the globalists who are running the show to find some sort of way to bring this to a peaceful end. None. They just want to keep dumping money into the war machine, browbeating you into submission, and allowing that conflict to stretch on into an untold number of lives, and no obvious end game whatsoever. It's been a dissatisfying, to say the least, gambit since the very beginning. Now, with that said, it seems Ukraine just keeps on popping up in the news for any number of reasons. Last week, there was a man who is a full-blown Ukrainiac by the name of Ryan Ruth who tried to kill President Trump, apparently on the grounds that President Trump wouldn't sustain the war and lead to more people being killed. He wanted to kill him. That was his plan. The New York Times today says he wanted to kill Trump and he was, quote, willing to die for Ukraine, is what they say in the report. Additionally, Vladomyrr Zelensky is right now in the United States of America, and he's campaigning in every practical way for Kamala Harris, and he's doing it at American taxpayer expense. Just to be really clear about what's happening here. Now, remember, they threw an impeachment at Donald Trump for meddling in Ukraine to benefit his election, on and on. What is this? What is this? Vladomyrr Zelensky has been touring ammunition factories in Pennsylvania now, touring ammunition factories, and then doing interviews with The New Yorker where he attacks the Trump-Vance campaign. In The New Yorker's interview with Vladomyrr Zelensky, they're talking to him about what Trump will do should he get power. And he says, quote, "My feeling is that Trump doesn't really know how to stop the war, even if he might think he knows how. With this war, oftentimes, you see, Trump doesn't know what he's doing," says Zelensky. "With this war, oftentimes, the deeper you look at it, the less you understand. I've seen many leaders who were convinced they knew how to end it tomorrow, and as they waded deeper into it, they realized it's not that simple." The New Yorker reporter says, well, apart from Trump's own reluctance to talk about Ukrainian victory, he has chosen J.D. Vance as his vice presidential candidate. Zelensky replies, he is too radical, he says. Here in the United States, he's campaigning in Pennsylvania, attacking the Trump-Vance campaign. This is the New Yorker, Vance has come out with a more precise plan to give up our territories, says Zelensky. Your words, not mine, the New Yorker person replies. But yes, that's the gist of it. Zelensky, his message seems to be that Ukraine must make a sacrifice. This brings us back to the question of the cost and who shoulders it. The idea that the world should end this war at Ukraine's expense is unacceptable, says Zelensky. But this is him barking orders at the United States, which has been way freaking generous to Ukraine. And they didn't really pause to see whether or not you were interested in supporting anything. If you were interested in 1 million people being dead. Or if you were on board with the plan, whatever it might be. Or you were read in on what the end game was. They never bothered to tell you. Because they don't care what you think of this. They just say support it or you're a bad person. That's been the whole pitch. I do not consider this concept of his a plan, says Zelensky, referring to J.D. Vance, in any formal sense. This would be an awful idea if a person were actually going to carry it out, to make Ukraine shoulder the costs of stopping the war by giving up its territories. Yes, that would be awful if people were to survive. No. Just let more people should die, is what Zelensky is saying here. There's certainly no way this could ever happen. This kind of scenario would have no basis in international norms, in UN statute. He says the UN. Well, who pays for the UN? Who gives the entire damn budget to the United Nations? So there's Zelensky today. He's touring. Now, I mentioned he's doing it at taxpayer expense. Do you know that right now he is flying around on a U.S. Air Force C-17? He's flying around on a C-17, attacking, at taxpayer expense, attacking Trump and Vance, campaigning for the war machine in Pennsylvania, and doing it on behalf of Kamala Harris. So let me tally this up. And I saw the great Corey and Ganamore pointed this out earlier on X. So what endorsements does Kamala have at this moment? So implicitly, she's got Vladomyrr Zelensky, who's attacking Trump and Vance. Vance more so, but he's attacking their campaign. He's attacking Trump because he says he's ignorant of how this all works and he wouldn't be able to bring the end to the war. Vladimir Putin has on camera endorsed Kamala Harris. So both sides of that war would like Kamala Harris to be the president of the United States. How about that? And Dick Cheney is also on the same wavelength as the other two. So we've got Cheney, Zelensky, and Putin all pulling for Kamala. What the hell is that? Well, you know what it is. You know what it is. And should we just put it at the end of this? I'm Donald Trump and I support this and I approve this message, right? Right at the end of that. That's what's happening. How much are we spending right now? How much are you spending? How much is your family spending to shuttle Zelensky around on a C-17 to the battleground states to campaign for Kamala Harris? And you're telling me this isn't election interference? It's insanity. It's total insanity. This is the way they wield their power, too. Now, again, if the fact sets were all reversed, if this were some sort of Republican who was flying around a foreign leader whose war we were sustaining and millions were being killed and we were using them to campaign in Pennsylvania, you know how this would go. Trump would be impeached a 10th time. That's how it would go. That's what it would be. You think Mike Johnson's going to raise even a little stink about this? I'd like to know what you're doing with a C-17. Who runs the C-17? What department of the federal government handles the C-17s? That's right, the Pentagon. So now we have the United States Pentagon interfering in American elections in the battleground states. That's what's happening as we speak. Meanwhile, President Trump is in Pennsylvania today. He's been campaigning. And rather than, identify some other country he'd like to screw up, he's concentrating on the country he'd like to fix, which is America. He was speaking to farmers in Pennsylvania, in Smithton, Pennsylvania, and he had a word of warning for the John Deere tractor company. Everybody likes John Deere, right? Every big John Deere, it's Americana looking at a John Deere tractor. He said, that's fine, so long as you make your tractors here.
I just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company. But as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%. They haven't started it yet. Maybe they haven't even made the final decision yet, but I think they have. John Deere is going to, and anybody else that does this, because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing. And if you do that, you're going to have a 200% tariff put on the product that you make in Mexico, right across the border. They think they're going to make product cheaper in Mexico and then sell it in for the same prices they did before, make a lot of money by getting rid of our labor and our jobs, and really a great name, because John Deere's a great name.
Are you listening to this? You hear what he's doing? He said, okay, yeah, John Deere's a great name. Everyone, you think of John Deere, probably all around the planet. Insofar as people are aware of John Deere, they think American company, American tractor. You're going to make them in Mexico? You're going to try and stiff American workers? You think you're going to make it cheaper? 200% tariff. How about that? And he's not even president yet. He's just saying, look, I hear you're making all these plans. Just want to be really clear about what comes next for you, just so you know. What are the chances this causes John Deere to turn on a dime, All of a sudden, you're going to have a zero-turn tractor, like going the other direction. No, we're coming back. Don't worry. Sorry. No, we were just sightseeing. We weren't fully headed to Mexico. Just wanted to see what the border looked like. No, we're staying here. Don't you worry. What are the chances?
I buy a lot of John Deere. Tremendous. I'm one of their big customers. I buy a lot of John Deere product as a private person. But if they're going to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on everything that they want to send back into the United States, which means one of two things. Our country's going to make a lot of money, or they're not going to build, they're not going to open, and or they're going to sell it to another country. They're entitled to do that. If they want to build in the country, in the United States, there's no tariff. You can go ahead and you can build in any one of the 50 states. You can go ahead. But if they don't want to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on John Deere.
Do you think he's been clear enough? Has he said it enough? Just want to make sure the message gets driven home. So there he is today, speaking up on behalf of the farmers, speaking up on behalf of American workers. Meanwhile, what is Kamala trying to do? She's trying to, drive up the prices of the housing market and tax unrealized gains. She's looking for ways to raise taxes on everybody, screw up the economy even more, out of control government spending that leads to inflation, that leads to prices skyrocketing. We know what this looks like. She's playing games right now. She's like, I support fracking. No, she doesn't. She doesn't support good old-fashioned American energy. Not a chance. It's a lie in the service of an election season. That's what she's doing right now. And their campaign doesn't even know how to talk about these issues. That's why she's not doing interviews. She doesn't want to explain all of what we refer to as flip-flops, but they're 180-degree betrayals of her prior statements, which already were horrific. We're going to go into your house. We're going to take your gun. We're going to find out how responsible you're being. That's the plan. Mandatory buybacks, gun confiscation. Now she's saying, well, I'm a gun owner. Okay. What? Tell us what kind of gun you own. How do you put the magazine in? How do you release it? How do you load the ammo? Which direction do you point it? Let's begin there. Kamala Harris. She has no idea. All right, Matt's in Rockville, line 1. Hello, Matt. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, you forgot a big one. You got McCain, you got Putin, you got Zelenskyy, who is a dictator who should have had a presidential election by now and just decided, no, we're canceling it. But it's not an explicit endorsement, but after hacking the Trump campaign, Iran certainly seemed to want to help Kamala Harris's campaign. So, the biggest state sponsor of terror, probably not a good endorsement to get, but she got that one too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so Dick Cheney, Vladomyrr Zelensky, Vladimir Putin, and Iran, the leading state sponsor of terror. I'm embarrassed I forgot about that, but how could you forget? It's such an important one. Matt, thank you for reminding me. It's really, really a smart point. And that's true. They just had all that information come out that it was the Iranians who hacked the Trump campaign and stole all sorts of data and then disseminated it to the Kamala campaign and the media, including reportedly some sort of opposition research packet, sort of like a defensive research packet that the Trump campaign prepared on J.D. Vance. They went through his history and they, as you do, you vet a candidate, and they prepared all this information on J.D. In order to figure out whether or not he's got any liabilities, which they're doing their due diligence, right? And the reporting is, the Iranians got a hold of it. And then they gave it to the Kamala campaign, and then they gave it to the media. But nobody's releasing it. Everyone's being super responsible. So, which, of course, let me just say a couple things about it. One, as Matt points out, that means the Iranians are trying to get Kamala elected. Two, how do we know that they're not actually releasing anything that they got from these documents? The media can just pretend like, we did our own reporting, and we just happened to find the same stuff that were in these documents. Well, I assume that the roadmap was in the document. You're just pretending like you weren't using it as a guide. Or three, maybe J.D. Vance is clean as a whistle. Maybe there's not much to go by here. Crap. We have this stuff. There's nothing even interesting here for us to release. We can't take him down with this. So they're pretending like, the least we could do is pretend we were being noble by not using it. Right? Sure. Yeah, that's again, what are the dividing lines here? You want to be on the side of George Soros or Elon Musk? Huh? Where do you want to be in this fight? It's crystal clear to me. Crystal clear to me. It's amazing that it's still a mystery to others. Oh. Let me go to the phones. I've got Dustin calling in from Winchester, line 4. Hello, Dustin. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Well, it's appalling that the military-industrial complex, 700 admirals, high-ranking generals have just endorsed Kamala Harris's campaign, along with the 51 intelligence apparatchiks who signed off on the Hunter Biden laptop scan. So that just goes to show you that the left has pretty much infiltrated every aspect of our society.
So this is what Dustin's referring to is this group that calls themselves National Security Leaders for America. And to give you a sense of the 700 national security officials and generals who signed on to this thing, Hillary Clinton is one of them. Just to be crystal clear. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, Dustin, the same thing you're probably thinking, which is look how larded up the top ranks of our military have become. Look how yeah.
Forget about recruit. Don't join the military. Just exercise your Second Amendment at this point.
What general officer looks at the withdrawal from Afghanistan that Kamala Harris signed off on, the last one in the room, and says, you know what we need? More of that. We need more of that.
The same one that had the rifle scope on backwards on his firearm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Vince.
You're totally right about that. Oh my gosh. What a complete disaster. And these idiots, they're sitting there thinking, well, if I sign my name, General so-and-so retired, everyone's going to know that it's time to vote for Kamala because no one's quite as impressive as I am. You're an idiot. That's what I'm here to tell you. You're a moron. You're supporting a corrupt system, and actually you're the product of it. And here you are, 700 national security leaders. You literally signed the same letter that Hillary Clinton did and are now demanding us respect you for it. No, we don't. Sorry, at all. It's really what a disaster. You know what's sad too for a lot of the general officers? And I hear this a lot from guys who serve with some of them. It's like I used to like that guy. He used to be something, and then something happened to his brain. Yeah, well, it's not good for the rest of us. That was a good call. Yeah, the military-industrial complex, indeed. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. It's not just Springfield, Ohio that's being upended by a surge of foreign nationals being dumped into the community. It's also places like Charleroi, Pennsylvania. Listen to a gentleman named Andy who's been talking about what's happening in his town.
So is that happening here? It's like jobs are that would be going to Americans are going to Haitians or other immigrants?
Well, yeah, because that's what these staffing agencies are doing is they said we can't find people to work. Well, that's a half truth. There's people that would work if you paid them, the wage, the going wage for the work, but they want to pay less, and so they ended up hiring getting involved with these agencies that bring in these workers. The perception is that it's not legal. Now, you get a lot of people saying they're illegals, and everyone wants to fight about that term, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is what's going on and how it's affecting everybody. And so those jobs that they have, they used to be American jobs, but they decided we don't want to pay $5 more an hour. We'll pay $3 more an hour, and we'll take that off the top, and we'll keep that, and we'll bring in Haitians through this work program. And so it's a lot of jobs that have been lost by Americans. So they bring in the people from third world countries who will do that work for poverty wages.
Right.
And they think it's a great deal.
Right.
And probably is a good deal for them.
Yeah. But not for the natives.
No. The man who did that reporting, has been doing that reporting, joins us now. His name is Nate Hochman. He's a senior advisor to America 2100 and a writer for the American Spectator. Nate, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Charleroi, Pennsylvania, you've been spending some time there, and I understand that it is a town of 4,000 American citizens. Tell us a little bit more about it. What has happened to Charleroi?
Yep, it's a town of just over 4,000. I think 4,134 was the 2020 census. It's in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's about as quintessential kind of Trump country, deindustrialized, quite poor, downwardly mobile, white working class as it gets. And over the last couple of years, they've had 2,000, by the most conservative estimates, Haitians just airdropped on top of the town. Nobody really can figure out how they're getting there, why they're showing up specifically in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, but it's completely overwhelmed the town. And, there's been a whole lot of news cycles about places like Springfield, and rightly so. But what a lot of people don't know is that Springfield was just the tip of the iceberg. Springfield was something like 20,000 Haitians. Hundreds of thousands of Haitians alone, just that nationality, have been flown or otherwise transported into America over the last few years. And so you have a lot of Springfields, but you also have a lot of Charleroi, Pennsylvanias, which are these small and quite vulnerable towns, often in deep red conservative parts of the country, that have effectively been colonized or invaded by thousands and thousands of people from third world countries, in this case, Haiti.
And as a matter of percentage growth, Charleroi, Pennsylvania has been much more overwhelmed than Springfield, Ohio. You say that 4,000 American citizens there, and all of a sudden 2,000 Haitian foreign nationals dropped into the town. That's a massive increase in terms of percentages.
Yeah, and again, 2,000 is probably an antiquated estimate. We talked to the city councilman and the mayor, and they told us it's probably closer to 2,500 or even 3,000 at this point. So you're really looking at more than half of the town's pre-existing native population is now Haitians. And the adult Haitians, they're disproportionately military-aged men. They almost always at the adult level speak at best very little English and often no English at all. They're from radically different cultures, obviously. And they are completely uninterested in assimilating in a lot of cases because they don't have to, because they have thousands of their fellow countrymen there. So they've effectively set up their own slice of Haiti in places like Charleroi, Pennsylvania. They've got their own businesses, their own associations. They speak their own language with one another. And the townspeople have to foot the bill for most of that.
So really what you're doing in some sense is not just moving Haitians in, you're moving Haiti in to a place like Charleroi, Pennsylvania. This is, you've got some audio here. This is a gentleman speaking with you about the future of his town, what's going to happen.
Yeah, this used to be just a nice blue-collar, middle-of-nowhere town. You know, it was affordable to live in, wasn't a terrible neighborhood. You could raise your family here and live your life, and everybody just pretty much leave you alone. But I don't know if it's going to come back from this. I don't know if we're going to come back from this. At the point now, I think they've just destroyed the town, and they've bought all these properties. Okay, you might be able to buy a house cheap, but what kind of people are you going to get in?
Yeah, what kind of neighbors you have?
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
And right now I'm surrounded by the immigrants. Mm-hmm. Never used to be that way. They don't care about their property. They'll destroy it. They'll run through, steal your stuff, break your stuff. There's no pride anymore.
You know, I can instantly, insofar as the media will ever talk about this, what'll probably happen, Nate, is Donald Trump will share your video, and then the media will start attacking that guy as a bigot for being upset that his community is being destroyed.
Yeah, actually, that guy, Ernie, who I just love, he's an amazing guy. He's actually speaking at the Trump rally in Pennsylvania tonight. And he's speaking there because of our video. You know, the Trump people saw our video. So the poor guy probably doesn't know what's in. He's a trucker. You know, he works as a trucker in a small town Pennsylvania so obviously he adores Trump. So it's awesome that he gets to speak there. But, you know, exactly as you said, once he's up there, even though for him it's the opportunity of a lifetime, the media is going to attack him. But again, what that guy was saying, and I love it because, you know, he was articulate in a very simple kind of, working class blue collar guy way. That is the most reasonable human impulse of any human instinct ever. These people, their families have been there for generations. It's a very tight knit, small community where people, they don't have a lot, but they rely on one another. And he's the only native Pennsylvanian in his neighborhood now. Who wouldn't be upset by that?
What you talk about his matter of fact way of speaking, but this is what distinguishes him. He hasn't been corrupted by the way our ruling class acts, which is not a matter of fact; it's a matter of fiction. They'll spin something up to try and explain all of this away. He's just telling you what's actually happening to his life. He's like, it used to be good, now it's bad. All the new people that they dumped on us have made my community a lot crappier, and that's just a matter of fact. And as far as our media class is concerned, you're not allowed to say that's somehow bigoted and intolerant. Meanwhile, none of these people, the people who are going to be barking at him after he speaks at a Trump rally tonight, and God bless Ernie for that, none of these people would allow it to happen in their own communities. They wouldn't let it happen on Martha's Vineyard. They wouldn't let it happen in their New York City apartment building. They're not letting it happen there. So why should it happen to Ernie?
Right. No, in Martha's Vineyard, they're 10 clicks to the right of Trump on immigration, right? But at the southern border, of course, it's the exact opposite. But no, exactly. I mean, people who have been sort of inundated in elite pieties, when some blue-collar trucker guy says, hey, I don't like that now I'm fully surrounded by immigrants, they sort of cringe, right? Viscerally, oh, you can't say that. But again, why isn't he allowed to say that? Why isn't this guy his family has been here for generations? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I just want to point out that he made a number of genuine observations. It wasn't predicated
Correct.
on these like racial categories or anything else. It was literally, hey, I'm surrounded by people who don't speak the same language as me. The community looks a lot more disgusting than it used to. I have stuff being stolen on a constant basis. So I'm not really happy in this environment. That's a very reasonable critique. It's not one predicated on some sort of gut level aversion to people who don't look like me.
That's exactly right. And something else that he said, which really, and again, I think in a sort of very simple idiom is so important and articulate that gets to the heart of all this. He said, there's no pride anymore. People don't care about anything. And this is something we heard in varying forms from all kinds of locals in Charleroi. The people coming in now, they're getting crammed into these rentals, which are owned by the businesses that are bringing them in. And they treat the rentals badly because this is not their home. This is not their country. These are not their people. And this is not their home, their house, literally, that house that they're living in. So you can literally see, if you go through Charleroi, the houses that are owned by natives versus the buildings that are frequented or lived in momentarily by the recent arrivals, because the houses that are owned by natives, the lawns are manicured, they're clean, they have signs at the, welcome signs at the doorway, et cetera. And the houses often that are the rentals that the recent arrivals lived in are gross, to be totally candid. They are not well kept. And that's because there's a huge difference between this being your community that your family has been in for generations, that you have a deep generational investment in, and, as Ernie said, a pride in, that you're proud of, that you care about, and that you are a steward of. And people for whom this is just one place that they're in as they're passing along to the next place. That distinction matters.
So to what extent have you been able to identify, Nate, the complicity of American leaders in the destruction of a place like Charleroi? Obviously, at the very top level, we can point to what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done to the country and the way they've changed the rules to allow foreign nationals to pour in this capacity. But it does feel like that at the state level and perhaps even at the local level, that there are a lot of people who are aiding and abetting this chaos.
Absolutely. Whenever you go to a town like Charleroi or Aurora or Springfield or any of the other hot spots that have been on people's radar, the culprits for the immigration crisis, it's usually one of three sectors, and it's probably almost always a combination of three. It's the federal government, and particularly all these new Biden-Harris programs. It's the NGO industrial complex, these lavishly funded nonprofits that basically exist singularly to subvert American immigration law, and it's big business, which obviously has a vested profit incentive in bringing in cheap foreign workers, usually a combination of the three. In Charleroi, the biggest and most immediate culprit is big business. There's these meat packing plants and staffing agencies, which you heard Andy talk about earlier, in and around Charleroi, that have brought in thousands of cheap immigrant workers to staff their plants because they don't want to pay Americans a American wage. And that the result of that is the degradation that you're seeing in the town.
Yeah. And so now you're watching the political ramifications of this idea that it's Republicans who are in league with big business is, at least among the voters, a very foreign and now old concept, because it's those very same Republican voters who are really upset with all of these concentrations of power betraying them.
That's right. And, talking to folks on the ground in Charleroi, one thing that becomes immediately apparent, which you and I already know, but it becomes more apparent again when you talk to folks, the average Republican voter is miles ahead of the average Republican politician on this stuff, precisely because they haven't been inundated by all of these elite pieties. They know what's happening to their town, and they know who's doing it, and they're rightfully upset about it. Republican politicians go, oh, we can't criticize big business because of the free market or something like that, some nonsense. Republican voters like Ernie and Andy say, hey, my neighborhood used to be people like me, and now I'm surrounded by people who aren't anything like me, and big business is bringing them in. I'm against that.
I want to point out something, though. It's not a free market if the government is importing your cheap labor in violation of your community. That's not a free market. That's a rigged crony market that's working at the expense of Americans.
Well, that's exactly right. And this is why the sort of Republican lines on the free market often actually have no relationship to the truth. Like, a true free market system would be extraordinarily radical compared to the system that we have today. And Republicans, a lot of Republicans at least, often find themselves defending these unholy marriages of big government and big business that have very little to do with an actual free market system, but they defend it as if it's capitalism, as if it's the free market, when in fact it's anything but.
Yeah, it's chaotic. Well, I know there's been so much attention on Springfield, Ohio, as a result of certainly President Trump highlighting it, rightfully so, J.D. Vance more so than any other United States senator. But Nate Hochman, you are doing amazing work with America 2100, and the attention you brought to Charleroi, Pennsylvania, apparently is going to net a big speech tonight from Ernie, who's going to share his perspective being a resident there. Thank you, Nate. I appreciate your remarks and your coverage. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate it.
Nate Hochman with America 2100, and he's with the American Spectator too. And if you're interested in seeing any of these videos from Charleroi, which are just conversations with your fellow American, the kind of person who'd like their old life back, please, not the one that's been destroyed by Kamala Harris and company, you can find them all on Nate Hochman's X account. So many great videos he's been sharing, or just search for America 2100. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Hugh calling in from Frederick on line 4. Hugh, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Well, Vince, thank you, and good afternoon. It may be a bit noisy. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
I just want to remind your listeners that during the DACA discussions under Obama, if you went up to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and as a recovering corporate lawyer, I had reason to go up there, I was really surprised to find outside the doors these enormous posters supporting DACA and all about this dreamers crap, when the reality was, behind closed doors, what we're looking at is cheap labor to screw the American worker. And you had an unholy alliance between big business and unions who saw themselves enabled to exploit an opportunity to get basically cheap third world labor and try and unionize them, and big business looking at really, as I say, screwing the American worker and firing people. And there was a chicken plant, chicken slaughterhouse and packing plant outside Lebanon, PA. And a lot of guys, quite frankly, and this disgusted me as a veteran, a lot of guys who were veterans who basically joined to do 4 years to fight, whether it was in Iraq or Afghan, they came home, they went back to the plant. And I'm talking to one of the guys at Lebanon VA Medical Center, and the poor bugger gets fired. And they were replaced by legal Mexican workers. So your point about the unholy alliance between big business and demanding cheap labor, it's real. And it's been there for many, many years.
Yeah, and the Chamber of Commerce, as you told us, Hugh, supporting amnesty at that time. That's what DACA is, amnesty for illegal aliens in the country. It was paired up with DAPA, remember? There's DAPAs and DACAs and all sorts of things. It wasn't, as my old colleague Neil Monroe once said to President Obama, it wasn't taking care of Americans. It was at their expense. All right, we'll keep covering it. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.